Welcome back to Up and Adam. I'm Jack Tomczak. That's Andrew Lee.
Good morning.
Third wheeling is Pete Hegseth.
Great morning here.
And we are also talking about his book, In the Arena, available at every place you can buy a book. And Pete, you've got some signings coming up.
Yeah, a couple of book signings here in the Twin Cities area. Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, we're going to be at the Barnes & Noble at Harmar. So they're in Roseville. So tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, the Barnes & Noble at Harmar. And then Friday night in Stillwater at the Valley Bookseller at 6 o'clock.
Nice.
So I'm an East Sider, so we had to do one over on the East Side at Stillwater.
Cool. All right, Pete,
Valley
if you would
Bookseller.
like a copy of your book signed by Andrew and myself, we'd be happy to do
Please do.
Well, we've got another one to give away, right?
Well, whatever we
That's
give
true.
away, I'll sign it, and then the both of you will sign it, too.
We'll all sign the next book we give away. We're not doing it now.
No.
Not yet. But later on in the show, we'll give away another copy of In the Arena. We'll all sign that one.
So I have not read the entire book.
Even JJ.
I've read the.
Not going to be worth anything.
I read the first part, and there's plenty in that first part to do many, many hours of radio. And I was thinking yesterday, how do I tell Pete that I didn't read his whole book? That
You just told me.
He got me months ahead of time, so I had plenty of time to do it. And as I'd squirreled myself away yesterday to read more of your book, my 4-year-old Hug Nugget yelled up the stairs, "Dad! Indiana has a dead animal."
Okay.
And then I realized why I haven't read your book.
You have
That
small
pesky
children.
thing called life.
Yeah, my little boy, who's coming up on 2 in July, found a dead bunny.
It's hard to read when you have small children. It's hard to get through books when you have small. You just don't have time.
So in this book, you talk about American, how to be a better citizen. You reference Teddy Roosevelt's speech at the University of Paris, the Man in the Arena speech that many of us know. One thing here on page 9.
This is Up and Adam.
The only
Stop with the
really
buttons. Where's
serious
Lump?
candidate
Where's
for our
Lump?
times right now.
Where's Lump? We need Lump back. Page 9. Again, I got very deep. You're right, but what if America weren't the strongest? What if we could not lead morally, economically, politically, or militarily? If not America, who would it be? At the time of Teddy Roosevelt's speech, the United Kingdom was still the West dominant power. Then, exhausted after 2 world wars, our British friends took a knee and handed us the keys to the free world, a leadership role that we embraced. But what if America, intentionally or unintentionally, took a knee today? What if we didn't lead? What if, saddled by mountains of debt, sprawling bureaucracies, and entitled citizens, and here's the part I've got a question about, we were not capable of leading? Because we can say that it is America's place to lead the world and spread freedom, spread democracy if they want it or not. But what if we can't?
Sure, exactly. And that's why the book starts with citizenship and shoring up who we are and understanding who we are, because without understanding that, you lose the will quite quickly. But you have to learn lessons from the last 15 years. I mean, I've been in Iraq, I've seen these things. I understand they were imperfect. I understand people don't want us chasing every enemy the world has to offer, or we don't need to be in every corner of the world. But if America isn't the sort of, we don't need to be a nation builder or the world's policeman, but at least the world's sheriff with a big shiny badge saying, hey, we will stand up to protect ourselves and our interests and our allies and enemies that need to be defeated, then there isn't anybody else out there. There quite literally isn't anyone out there. The West has totally gutted their militaries to pay for their welfare states. International institutions are never going to do it, nor are they in our interests. So we have a duty to make sure that America is capable of doing that. And that when we do go to war, and Roosevelt writes about this, we go to war to win. We go to war to prevail. We take the handcuffs off. We crush the enemy. And then we decide in the aftermath what is in the best interest of us and in lasting peace, not in nation building or remaking societies. We don't have to. But what I talk about a lot is the Iraq War. And I think the debate that's happening right now about Iraq is unfortunately very misplaced on both the right and the left, because everyone just says, oh, it's an unmitigated, inevitable disaster. When if you were there before the surge and after the surge and you look at what actually happened, we utterly crushed and defeated al-Qaeda in Iraq, the precursor to ISIS. Even Joe Biden in February of 2010 said Iraq was a success for the Obama administration. So they abandoned it, as they said they would on the campaign trail, both militarily and diplomatically, and it slid toward chaos and ISIS. So when we talk about Iraq, it shouldn't be that going there was just inevitably terrible. It was retreating from a successful battlefield will give you chaos and terrorism. Finishing something properly, again, not being there for 100 years to nation build, but just making sure you follow through on an investment is a pretty darn important thing to do.
So where is the line between nation building, being there for 100 years, and following through? We should still be there now.
There is no perfect line. Of course, we would still be there now with some residual element that continues to work with and train and support the Iraqi security forces and work diplomatically with them to make sure that they move. Because if we had done just a minimal investment residually, we could have prevented so much of the chaos that came in, including Iran's takeover effectively of that country because we abandoned it completely. So you're never going to have an exact number or an exact time or it's a principle that American leadership is needed because we see it being filled by everybody else right now, from Vladimir Putin to the Chinese in the South China Sea to Islamists to international organizations, none of which believe in free peoples or free markets, none of which have the militaries that would necessarily be aligned with us. And so I say this in the book, if the 21st century is not an American century, it will not be a free century. And that's where this idea of history not being over comes into play.
I was promptly put in my place, I believe, by a colonel who came on the show when I said that the military's job is to kill people and break things and not nation build. And he came in and brought up a ton of examples of America doing exactly that and that working out for us and for them. Take a look at Japan, take a look at Germany. There are plenty of places around the country that we have a presence in. I think you can question, I don't think Germany's going to fall apart if we leave.
Fair enough.
Probably advantageous for us militarily to have a presence in Germany.
I've been put in my place by a lot of colonels, so don't feel alone on that one.
You have a good line in your book. I'm not going to ask you to read because we'd lose our jobs.
Because there's a word in there that you shouldn't read on the radio. But yes, I've been put in line by colonels. Oftentimes, I'm a little bit more of an ask for forgiveness than permission kind of guy, and that's why. But there are examples, of course, in history where America did stay and help rebuild nations.
But that was after we clearly won the conflict.
And very different societies from Islamic societies with a totally different cultural context. So you can't just apply that universally. And that's why a residual commitment in Iraq is very different than what we would have done in Germany and Japan. I also argue against
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
In those instances, we beat standing armies.
Correct.
When you're fighting an Al-Qaeda, when you're fighting an ISIS, you're not fighting within borders. You're not fighting a standing army. You're not fighting a nation's military.
100%. And I also argue the difference between Iraq and Afghanistan. Afghanistan is not worth a long-term investment because it is literally biblical times with AK-47s and cell phones. I mean, there are no seeds for civil society whatsoever. So everything we pour into that hole, unfortunately, isn't really going to something that's going to be lasting after we leave. Whereas Iraq, at least there were the seeds for something possible that would be, again, this isn't about them. This is about our security. And when we abandoned it, we created an ISIS that you talk about San Bernardino or Europe, I mean, is literally on our doorstep and whose ideology is more rampant today than it's ever been.
Well, and the argument that typically came from the right and was ripped on by the left is that we need to better to fight them there than here. And the left said, "Well, come on, that's not going to happen," and then it does. And terror is a plane ticket away. Write that down. So it makes a heck of a lot more sense to get rid of the problem over there than over here.
Well, and Minnesotans know that too. With the terror trial just started for 3 Somali Muslim Americans, that Minnesotans who went to go fight with Al-Shabaab and ISIS. We have that threat. In fact, I just did a segment with Fox and Friends on Tuesday, which I can share with you, where I went down to the Cedar Riverside area and interviewed Somali Muslims about all of this. And first generation, many of them don't even speak English, and they've been here 15 years. And then it's the second generation that's most problematic because they do speak English. They are a part of American culture, but they don't feel an association necessarily. Right. They're maybe seduced by the idea of the caliphate and ISIS, and there are radical mosques and radical imams teaching preaching radicalism here in Minnesota that give them the pipeline. It's right here if we're not careful about demanding both assimilation and allegiance. Again, it has nothing to do with race, nothing to do with it has to do with a belief in America and this experiment, which is what the arena is all about. America has always been an idea. We need to demand that idea of our citizens, regardless of where they come from.
And that is something we've gotten very far away from in this country. That you can come here, and you can bring your culture with you and keep that. It's like,
sure. Well,
how about you celebrate and enjoy and embrace the American culture because this is something different. And frankly, if where you came from was so great, you'd still be there. So how about you're here, get on board, USA, USA, USA.
Amen, amen, amen. That seems like an old-fashioned concept. It is not at all. It is a necessary universal concept. Without it, we cease to be a nation state, which is, in fact, what a lot of these ideologies don't want. The caliphate, international institutions, they want to break down these borders. Roosevelt warns about it in his speech. He calls them citizens of the world, whose allegiance is more to this amorphous sense of humanity, which makes them utterly undesirable citizens of their own country because they don't invest in the beliefs and principles of the very nation where they live. We are being led by a citizen of the world, the first president who's a citizen of the world, which is why we get so much of what we've gotten in the world.
And where do you think we lost that sense of, if you're going to be here in America, you are going to be an American? You know, in World War II, we had people, German Americans, who joined the army and fought against Germany. They did that because they were Americans, identified as such. And of course, you're gonna have the examples of that now. But overall, it's like this idea that it's somehow you can't be. It's bad to be American, bad to be pro-American, and somehow we're the only culture in the world that doesn't get to be celebrated.
Postmodern moral relativist progressive elitism that has infected our campuses and the minds of our professoriate and the youth that come out of it, and now our governance, because as Lincoln said, the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation becomes the philosophy of government in the next. If you teach kids that being an American doesn't matter, that they're a citizen of the world, then they don't know how to defend their own nation, and they want to open up their borders and say it's all good. And you see it. I call Obama's foreign policy in the book a coexist foreign policy. We've all seen the bumper sticker, right? And I throw up a little bit in my mouth when I see it every time. But the coexisting is fine as a means. But when when coexisting is your ends, or engagement is your ends, now you're coexisting and engaging with a bunch of bad ideas that want to shut you down or don't believe in freedom. And you leads you in these terrible directions, which is where our foreign policy is going.
And one of the things that my former boss, Michelle Bachmann, has said that I wholeheartedly agree with, and she got criticized for it, is she said, not all cultures are equal. And the left, maybe the general public, will say that that's a horrible thing to say. Of course, all cultures are equal. Well, no, they're not. Go look at the countries that if you're gay, they'll kill you. Is that equal? Or if you're a woman, you don't get to drive. Is that equal? No, it's not.
And the hypocrisy of the American left, they're divesting from North Carolina because of a bathroom bill, yet they're not divesting from companies who headquarter in countries where, like you said, I mean, it's unbelievable. And it comes from this, it's in many ways an anti-Western idea that's infected our higher academics for the last 50 years that has taught kids to not love what has made America special, and it starts to project out in the other direction.
Yeah, and
we
can't be pro-American. We can't celebrate the culture that historically, as we've said before, is the best. It's the best. The good things have come from here.
People want to come here.
Right.
Yes, we have liberated other people and not taken their land because we believe freedom is a good thing. Yeah. No one else in the course of human history has done that or has been able to do that. And they all do it on their all the leftists, of course, do it on their iPhones that were created by a country that allowed entrepreneurs to create such a product over the course of human history.
Yep.
It's so obvious it's painful.
So, buy this book, In the Arena by Pete Hegseth. You can get it anywhere books are sold. I'd like to apologize to you, Pete, for not reading the whole book, and apologize to my wife. I read 9 extra pages I didn't need to read for this morning. I could have read to page 11. Because
that's just page 11.
I even missed a lot of my notes between 0 and 11. Teddy Roosevelt saying that the American public far more conscious of its rights rather than of its duties and blind to its own shortcomings.
It's amazing that
there's a whole show in that sentence right
What
there.
he wrote about in 1910 is the same today as it was in 1776. I'll make 2 more shameless plugs. There's an audiobook that I recorded myself, so you can, if you're not a reader and you're a listener, it's easy to download.
All right, say
anywhere.
that again, but take the out.
Audio. Oh yeah. Oh, recording it is a laborious process. All right, do it again. Yeah, it's. I sat in a booth, so you can listen to it. And then there's 2 events which I mentioned before: Harmar Mall, Barnes and Noble tomorrow night, 7 p.m. for I'll do a brief talk and a book signing, and then Friday night in Stillwater at Valley Booksellers at 6 p.m.
Cool. And where should people go online to find these dates or find you? Where's the best?
Yeah, go to my Twitter feed at Pete Hegseth or PeteHegseth.com. But yeah, any Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you want to buy it, I would appreciate it.
All right, next time I see
my wife would appreciate it.
I will have 20 more pages read.
Thank you, sir.
Let's take a break, and then we'll take Jim, our caller. And when we come back, Pete will still be here, and we'll talk with John Spry about Donald Trump's plan to just have America not pay its debts.